So we'll do a quiz over Terran Wanderer on Tuesday. We'll start High King today. Probably, yeah, we'll start today. So let's finish Terran Wanderer. We left off the other day with the chapter 19, the Potter's Wheel. So Terran has so far, in his travels through the Freakmont, met two craftspeople. I hate that word. I'm going to be sexist. Two craftsmen. And the first one, what?
What about artisans?
Artisans is fine. The first one. Get rid of all these dead markers. First one was Hebed the Smith. There's two D's. Okay. And the second one was Dwivak the Weaver. Now he meets a third one. And Law. I want to make sure I can spell his name. Two E's. Yeah, Law. He's called Clay Shaper, is his last name, essentially. Okay? So we have these three artisans. And the first page, 190 of the chapter, Terran has asked in the previous page, kind of, where am I? And In-law says at that page, 189, this is Comet Marin. I've told you where you are, the man says, good-naturedly. Now might you be willing to tell me who you are and what brings you to a place whose name you must ask? Have you lost your way? Were you looking for another Kamat? Terran, I am called Wanderer. As for losing my way, can't say that I have, for I'm not sure myself where my path lies. That is, I don't have a way, so to speak. Well, he says, then Marin is as fair a place as any to break your journey. Come along if you want to see what kind of hospitality I can offer you. Okay? So he dumps another spadeful of clay into the buckets. Terran offers to help him. He doesn't refuse the offer of help. And he soon realizes these buckets are heavier than he thought they would be. His brow soon burst out in sweat. He could barely stagger along under the load. He felt doubling at every pace. And the hut to which the man pointed seemed to grow farther instead of closer. Okay? Terran says, if you're going to fix your chimney, you come a long way to get your clay, essentially. Bottom of page 191. Terran says, when I asked if you sought daub to mend your chimney, I spoke foolishly. If this is your work, I have seen some of it before, and I know you, because he has gone inside the man's, quote-unquote, I'm going to call it this, hut. And what does he see? He sees earthenware of all kinds, vessels of plain baked clay, graceful jars. Randomly he sees pieces whose craftsmanship and beauty made him catch his breath. Where has he seen a piece of this?
In Gast's treasure house.
In Gast's treasure house. Okay. Potter nods. Yep, that's mine. That's me. If you've seen it, it may be indeed you do know me. For I am old at my craft, wanderer, no longer sure where the clay ends and in-law begins. If ever in truth, they weren't one and the same. Kind of implying there, even when he's done at the end of the day, he's probably still got clay stuck on his fingers and in his fingernails. Terran looks around and he sees clay-spattered tables covered with jars of paints, pigments, glazes. Terran says, it was told that one piece of your making is worth more than all of a Cantref Lord's treasure house. And I believe it now. In-law says, in response to, this is a treasure house in itself. In other words, your workroom is a treasure house. In-law. riches and fortune. Food for my table, rather. He makes these things simply to provide for his meals. Most of these pots and bowls I send to the small comots where the folk have no potter of their own. As I give what they need, they give what I need. Notice, it's not a bartering system. He's not selling them. He's just exchanging. He needs something from them. They need something from him. Treasure is what I need the least. My joy is in the craft, not the gain. His joy is in the making, not what he can get from the making. Would all the fortunes in Prydain help my fingers shape a better bowl? That is, if I had the wealth of Math, the king, would that help me make a better bowl? Taryn, there are those who claim work such as yours comes by enchantment. It's kind of implying, you dabble in the dark arts or something like that. Anla, I wish. Why? Because it would spare much toil. It'd be a whole lot easier to be able to wave a wand, and have it magically appear. No, wanderer, my wheel, alas, is like any other. True it is. He means the wheel is true. It's flat. Because if a potter's wheel isn't true, isn't flat, everything he tries to make on that is going to be what?
Wobbly.
Crooked, wobbly. Okay? What else does he mean now? It's true in the sense that, everything that comes off of this is made how?
Honest.
My own two hands. It's honest work. Okay? He goes on and says that he mentions the last master craftsman of pottery in Prydain, Gavanian the Lame. He says, but Gavanian too discovered and set down the high secrets of all crafts. These as well. What? Iran stole. What did Aidan say? That Iran has stolen.
The secrets of farming.
Yeah, secrets of farming, planting, etc. Anlaw says he has stolen all the real secrets of crafting, creating. He says, these as well Iran stole to hoard in Anuvan, where none may ever profit from them. A lifetime have I striven to discover them again, to guess what might have been their nature. Much have I learned. How? By doing. As a child learns to walk. Well, how does a child learn to walk? How does a child learn to ride a bicycle?
Step by step.
Someone showing me.
Okay? And?
They fall a few times.
Yeah, you have to fall. You fall off the bicycle and you get what? Scraped knees, scraped elbows, scraped hands. If you're going to learn, you got to get up and do it again. And what? Fall again. In other words, he's learned through the pain of trial and error. But my steps falter. In other words, I'm getting old. The deepest lore yet lies beyond my grasp, and I fear it shall. What's he trying to get at?
That it'll take more than a lifetime to really bring back the secrets that Iran stole.
Okay. What else, though? I mean, the second part of it. To get at the secrets. He's saying, I have spent my life in pursuit of what? Hidden knowledge. Notice, it's not knowledge he can read in a book. Okay? It's knowledge he has to find. How? By doing. What's the title of this book? Terran Wanderer. What's he seeking for?
Who he is.
Knowledge. That he finds how?
For himself.
By doing. By getting out there, okay, and learning about himself. Anlaw says, let me gain this lore, let me gain this secret knowledge, and I'll yearn for no magical tools. Let me find the knowledge, and these, he says, will be enough to serve me. Taryn, but you know what you seek. That is, you know what you don't know. And that's what you seek. You know you don't have all the answers, all the secrets to this kind of making. And that's what you're looking for. That's what you're seeking. Taryn, I don't even know what it is I'm looking for. He says, I alas seek without knowing even where to look. If I had an address, if I had a name, what's the only thing he's been told to look for?
The mirror of.
The Mirror of Luna. Somewhere in the Lagadarn Mountains. Or maybe a lake. And he tells Anla about Hevid the Smith, Drivak the Weaver woman, the sword and the cloak, which he has strapped in his scabbard, and the cloak he's wearing on his back. He says, I was proud of my work. Yet at the end, neither anvil nor loom satisfied me. Anla, what about the potter's wheel? You want to give a shot? Terence says, don't know anything about it. So Anla agrees. And we're told, Anla drew up his coarse robe, seated himself at the wheel, which he quickly set spinning, and on it flung a lump of clay. Potter bent almost humbly to his work, reached out his hands as tenderly as if he were lifting an unfledged bird. That is, a bird that hadn't left its nest. Before Terrence's eyes, Anla began shaping a tall, slender vessel. As Terrence stared in awe, the clay seemed to shimmer on the swiftly turning wheel and to change from moment to moment. As he watches, it changes from one thing into something else. Now Terran understood Anla's words. For indeed, between the potter's deft fingers and the clay, what? He saw no separation. It's like his fingers and Anla becomes part of his creation. Anla was silent, as though Anla's hands flowed into the clay and gave it life. Anla was silent and intent. His lined face had brightened. The years had fallen away from it. Why?
Because he's doing what he loves, and doing that gives him more youth.
If you've been an athlete, you might have had a coach who's talked about being in the zone. Or maybe, you have had music lessons or something. It's also called flow. And it's this idea where you reach a certain level and your kind of awareness of yourself and your surroundings dies out. In soccer, it used to be, the way we would describe it is you become so familiar with your teammates that what you're doing on one side of the field and you're not you know where they are. You just instinctively, intuitively. So that you don't even have to look when you know where to make a pass. Okay? In running, when I was marathoning, it was described, as having that runner's high. Where you get to a certain distance, you get to a certain length, and you just kind of lose track of your surroundings. Okay? Anla has hit this spot. It's like he's no longer there. It's just the work. It's just the making of the pottery. Terran felt his heart fill with a joy that seemed to reach from the potter to himself, and in that moment understood he was in the presence of a true master craftsman, greater than any he had ever known. Well, he never actually saw heaven create from beginning to end, did he? Or even Drivak the Weaver woman. He starts asking them questions. He goes to work for them. He sticks around long enough to make a sword, to make a cloak, and leaves. And he says, Fluter was wrong. If there is enchantment, it's not in the potter's wheel. It's in the potter. That is, if there's magic, it's in your hands. There's no enchantment. A gift, perhaps, but a gift that bears with it much toil. What does he mean? A gift, perhaps. What was Michael Jordan born to do?
Basketball.
Raw, innate talent. Did he never have any coaching?
I had a ton of coaching.
Did he never have to practice? No, he had to practice a lot. Okay? He says, I was born with this gift, but what did it take? took a lot of toil. My fingers are sore from all this work. Taryn, man, if I could do that. It is toil I would welcome. Well, sit down then. Yes, Taryn, sit down at the wheel. He says, shape the clay for yourself. This beautiful, slender-like vase-like thing he's made. Taryn's like, no, I'll spoil it. In-law, spoil it you will, surely. Middle of 194. I'll toss it back into the kneading trough, mix it with other clay. Sooner or later it will serve again. It will not be lost. Nothing ever is, but comes back in one shape or another. What does he mean? In pottery, if you mess up, what can you do? Throw it back with the other clay, mix it back up, throw it back on. In woodworking, what can you do? You might start off trying to make one thing, and because of a screw up, you end up making something else. What did Lanio do with the broken bridle and bit?
He made belts for his children.
He made belts. In other words, it started as one thing, it became something else. Taryn, but you've already made this thing. The skill you have already put in it will be wasted. No. What's Taryn thinking? He's thinking entirely linearly. Not so. Craftsmanship isn't like water in an earthen pot, to be taken out by the dipperful until it's empty. No. The more drawn out, the more remains. What? What do you mean? Because eventually you take all the clay out of the pot, out of the bucket, and the bucket's going to be empty. So what does he mean? The heart renews itself, wanderer, and all skill grows all the better for it. In other words, he's saying, my time won't be wasted. Why? Because I've already done some. I learn, he's saying, every time I sit down at the wheel. None of my time is wasted. Here, try. Put your hands like this, thumbs like this. And so he starts to teach him. For the first moment, Taryn felt the clay whirling beneath his fingers. His heart leaped with the same joy he had seen on the potter's face. Okay? He's like, oh man, this is what I think I can do. Page 195. Taryn asks, will you teach me? This more than all else I long to do. Okay, I can teach you only what you can learn. How much that may be, time will tell. But if you want, stay. Tomorrow we'll begin. So what happens? They make themselves comfortable that night. And bottom of 195, Taryn's talking with Gergie, and he says, at the in-law's wheel, when my hands touched the clay, I knew I could count myself happy to be a potter. More than smithing, more than weaving, it's as though I could speak through my fingers. As though I could give shape to what was in my heart. I understand what in-law meant. In other words, he now wants this more than what?
Anything in the world.
Yeah. In-law puts himself into the clay and makes it live with his own life. What does he mean? Every craftsman, like, for example, an author, puts him or herself into what they make. Might be a book, might be a piece of clothing, it might be something like this. Every one of these, whether it's an iPhone 7 Plus or an iPhone 4, has a bit of Steve Jobs in it. Why? Because he was the brains behind it. Not the brains behind the technology. The brains behind the idea and
His pride and his passion.
the design. The design. Same thing with every Apple computer. The design for Jobs was extremely important. Not just what it did. You can have an ugly computer that does the same thing. But for him, the design, the structure, the beauty was as important. Okay? Taryn, if I could learn to do this, if I could learn to put a bit of myself in something and have it come alive with that. And he falls asleep. Okay? Next morning, they start working. And the summer goes by. Taryn works and works and works and works and works. He's been gone now, how long? Over a year. Yeah, over a year. Bottom of 196. We're told Anlaw was tireless, often spending nights without sleep and days without food, absorbed in labor at his wheel. Seldom was the potter content to repeat a pattern, strove to better even what he himself had originated. He said, stale water is a poor drink, meaning if you drink from the same cup, where's the fun in that? I mean, it tastes the same. Why make the same thing twice? C.S. Lewis said in one of his novels that trying to have the same experience twice is essentially like listening to the same symphony twice in a day, eating the same thing twice in a day. The first time it's what? Wonderful. The second time? Ditto. It's just the same. You don't get the newness, the freshness a second time. Stale skill is worse. So, Anlaw is saying, every creator should be attempting what? With every creation.
To make it new.
Something new. Something different. Okay? Rather than just making the same thing over and over again. The man who walks in his own footsteps only ends where he began. If you're doing the same thing over again, you're not growing. You're not advancing. You're not moving onward. So, summer goes by, and Taryn finally tries his hand at the wheel again. This time, Bull was not as ill-formed as the other. Anlaw says, "You learned a little. Never fear. When you shape one worth the keeping, it will be fired in the kiln." That is, you shape one worth keeping, we'll make it hard so it can be kept. Taryn fears maybe such a time will never come. At last, bottom of page 197, when the firing was done and the pieces had cooled, the potter drew out the bowl, turned it around in his hands as Taryn waited breathlessly. He says, "It rings true." Anlaw does. Beginner's work, but not to be ashamed of. Beginner's work means what?
Until it's not his craft's not perfected.
Yeah,
So
could be better, but not bad. Taryn's heart lifted as if he had vanished a wine bowl handsomer than ever Lord Gast had seen. Why? Because hearing Anlaw say, beginner's work, but, not bad. You've got some talent there. It's like Leonardo da Vinci saying, those splashes of color. Pretty good. But his joy soon turned to despair. Why? As he makes other vessels, none of them bring him joy. And he finally asks Anlaw, page 198. What lacks? He's saying, what am I missing? I could forge a sword well enough and weave a cloak well enough. But now, what I truly long to grasp is beyond my reach. Must the one skill I sought above all be denied me? Is the gift forbidden me? Have any of you ever tried to do something you really wanted to do, and you just realized, I can't do it? I don't have maybe the raw talent or the raw ability. Doesn't matter how good the coach is. It's not for me. He bows his head. His heart freezes. Notice, Anlaw does not gainsay him. Anlaw doesn't say, nope, you don't have the ability, kid. Sorry. Taryn, why is this so? It's a heavy question. In other words, beyond my pay grade. I don't know the answer to that. No man can answer it. Why are you given a desire to do something that you can't fulfill? You can't achieve. There are those who have labored all their lives to gain the gift, striving until the end, only to find themselves mistaken. That is, until their dying breath and they realize, I chose poorly. I should have tried something else. And there are those who had it born in them, yet never knew. And they never tried. Those who lost heart too soon. They didn't try hard enough or long enough. And those who should never have begun at all. Those who don't have an ounce of ability. He says, count yourself lucky that you have understood this now and not spent your years in vain hope. In other words, you've tried it, Taryn. It's something you desperately want. But you know you can't do. What has Taryn achieved? If not this gift.
He's learned something about himself.
Yeah. He's learned a little bit of self-knowledge. Isn't that part of knowing who you are? Taryn, this much have you learned, he says, and no learning is wasted. Yeah, but then what should I do? He's thinking, here at last I found happiness. Here at last I found my calling in life. You'll hear people talk about vocation, or possibly avocation, and occupation. Your occupation is what you do. Flipping burgers at McDonald's is an occupation. I doubt that it is an avocation to many people. That is their calling, okay? Which is pretty much the same as vocation. Vocare means to call out. Your vocation is your calling out. You're being pulled out from the mass to what? To do the thing you were supposed to do. It's Michael Jackson basketball. Jordan. Michael Jackson singing. Okay? Got the two MJs mixed up there. Taryn. Then what's my calling? Every one of you has to ask that question. Because every one of you has a major, or you will have a major, and guess what? The odds are really great that when you graduate, you will do nothing that has anything to do with your major. And even if you do, by the time you reach my age, the odds are very great that you will have switched careers 7 times in your life.
Did you switch careers 7 times?
Nope. Well, depends on what you call, I've had multiple jobs before I started teaching, but once I started teaching, no, this has been it. But this is a different kind of quote unquote gig.
So is this your occupation or your vocation?
This is this. This is what I was meant to do. Okay? Yeah, it's also an occupation, pays the bills. At this point, I'm in my 26 years, it's becoming much more of this than this. For the simple reason, I'm tired of doing it. Okay? There are other things that I would like to do beyond this. But Terrence, at what point? He's at the starting out point. He's not even 20 years old. And he's already asking, as kids are told to do in high school, what are you going to do with your life? You have to decide when you're 14, freshman year, are you going to be college track or are you going to be non-college track? Okay? Are you going to take honors? You're going to take AP? You're going to take the other kind of honors where everybody's in honors because nobody's a dummy, which is complete nonsense, but And law. There are more ways to happiness than in the shaping of a pot. He is saying, Taryn, what do? You've got to find this. Well, isn't that what he's been trying to do all along? He's trying to find out who he is. He's trying to find out what is my purpose? Why am I here? Because part of him thinks the reason he is here is to marry Elanwi. But he thinks, but if I don't have noble blood flowing in me, I can't marry Elanwi. Okay? So, in-law says, you've been happy here. You still can be. There is work for you to do. Your help is welcome and valuable, as much as friend as apprentice. In other words, okay, so maybe you won't be the next in-law clay shaper. But you can still be a good friend. You can still help. He says, tomorrow I would send my ware to Kamat Isav. But that's too long a journey for one as old as I am. Will you bear the burden for me? Interesting little question. Will you bear my burden? Will you help me carry my trouble? But here it means literally. Will you bear my burdens, the things I've been making, to this other place? Taryn, yes, knowing that his happiness was ended like a flawed vessel shattered in the fire. He hasn't really heard what in-law's been talking about. Okay? So, chapter 20. Taryn goes on, and he comes to another Kamat, and he finds out there are outlaws in the hills, and he knows exactly who they are. Dorath and his men. And one of the Kamat men, page 201, says, do you know this man? Taryn says, yeah, I know them well enough. They're paid swords, that is, mercenaries, hired guns. If none will hire them, they'll kill without fee. Guy says, yep, maybe they'll pass us by, but I doubt it. Kamat Isaf is small prey, but where defenders are few, the reasons to attack are all the more. That is, we're small, meaning we don't have much, but if we have even fewer defenders, then they'll come take whatever they want. Drudwa says, or Taryn asks, and if they attack, what are you going to do? Well, what would you have us do? If they attack, what do you think we should do? Taryn, I can ride back to Kamat Marin and bring you help. Too far, too long. They'll be here and gone by then. Okay? Drudwa says, no, we stand as we are. We have to defend ourselves as we are. Against 12, that's how many men Dorath has, 7. He says, my son, Lassar, he introduces him to Taryn. Barely older than Taryn was when Call had dubbed him assistant pig keeper, which is at least 4 years ago, because each book takes at least a year. I think it's more than that. So Lassar is probably somewhere around 12, 13, maybe 14. Taryn says, no, you're not 7, you're 9, because Gurgi and I will help you. You don't know us anything, Taryn, don't worry. So he says, will you heed me? That is, will you listen to me? Taryn is kind of putting himself in charge, or at least he's saying, I can help you in this. 9 may stand against a dozen and win the day. Number counts less than skill, though, with this guy. Were he alone, I would still fear him as much as 12. He will fight shrewdly, strive to gain the most. So we have to answer him in kind. Taryn says, if 2 men were to lie, waiting in the sheepfold, and 2 in the cattle pen, ready to spring up, they might take the band unawares, hold them a few moments, while the rest of us could attack from ambush in the rear. At the same time, if the women of your household set up a den with rakes and hoes, that is, start banging them together, okay, Dorath's men might think what?
That more people go running.
That our 9 is actually a lot more than 9. He says, that's a pretty good idea. Wouldn't have thought that myself. So, they put their plan into action. And Taryn says, top of 204, all plans can fail. Lasser says, middle of that page, you're called wanderer. To my mind, one who wanders must as well be one who seeks. True? I sought once to be a smith, once to be a weaver. But did he? Did he leave Caradalbin desiring to become a smith? No. It's once he was introduced to a smith, he thought, I could do that. Once he was introduced to a weaver, he thought he could do that. Once he was introduced to a potter, he thought he could do that. I saw once to be a smith, once to be a weaver, once a potter. That's over. Now perhaps I must wander without seeking. Lasser. Well, if you seek nothing, okay, remember who Lasser is. Kid who's 4 or 5 years younger than Terran. If you seek nothing, then you have little chance of finding it. If you're not looking for anything, what are you going to find?
Nothing.
Nothing. Is it true? Think of Lanio. He doesn't go looking, he just expects to find things. It's not that he's looking for anything in particular, though. Okay? Lasser says, our life is not easy here. It's not willingness that lacks, but knowledge. The sons of Dawn have long held Prydain against the Lord of Anuvan. And for their protection, we are grateful. Yet the secrets Iran, Death Lord, stole from us. To regain them, my father says, would give us stouter shield and sword than even the battle host of Prince Gwydion himself. But for all that, Issav is my home, and I am well content. I don't envy you, wanderer. Man, your life sucks, Terran, he says. Why? Because you don't know who you are or where you really even belong. Terran, no, I envy you. Because is Terran content to stay here?
Nope.
So, they, as I said, set their plan into action, and they wait for they wait for Dorath. Finally, they come. Okay, the outlaws wait outside the sheepfold, and then they spring the trap on them. Page 206 at the bottom. One of the comet men says, they flee. Terran sees Dorath, tries to overtake him. Dorath rides away. Terran turns, races to the stables, whistling for Melinlas. And they cry out to him, page 207, the day is ours, wanderer. Only then did Terran realize the sounds of the fray had ceased. And he sees Lasser wounded. Drudwa says, not deep, he'll live. And Lasser says, and so will I, thanks to you. In other words, if Terran and Gurgi hadn't showed up, these men would be dead. And Terran still doesn't know what he's good for. To you I owe much more than sheep. Right? And Drudwa says, full half the band will plunder no longer. How many men did Dorath have? He had 12. Now he's got 6. And he says, you have just helped not only us, but who? The other Kamats. The rest are scattered. It will be long before their wounds heal. You have well served us, wanderer, you and your companion. You came among us strangers. We count you strangers no longer. Okay? So, they urge him to linger, and we come to chapter 21, the mirror. Terran goes back to Anlaw. And Anlaw tells him, 208, you should be well content, wanderer. You've saved honest folk, their lives and homes. Drudwas told me I was no stranger, but a friend. For that I'm glad. I only wish that I weren't a stranger to myself. What use am I? That's again this. What am I to do with my life? He's asking. To myself, to anyone. None that I can see. Folk of Issav would gainsay you, says Anlaw. What use are you? You saved our lives. You saved our homesteads. You saved our sheep. And there might be others who would welcome a stout blade and a bold heart. Terran, a hired sword? Is that what you want me for? You want me to be sheriff? And follow the same way as Dorath? In other words, I would just be like Dorath. When I was a child, I dreamed of adventure, glory, of honor in feats of arms. I think now these things are shadows. If they're shadows, then that means they're what?
No longer dreams.
Okay, he no longer dreams of them. What else, though? The shadow is always what?
Evil.
No.
It's not there, it's just a casting of what actually physically is there.
It's an image of something else. Yeah. That is, there has to be something else that creates the shadow. So there must be something else behind the dreams of adventure, of glory, of honor, and feats of arms. There must be the reality that produces those dreams. ENGL. If you see them as shadows, then you see them for what they are. Many have pursued honor, and in the pursuit lost more of it than ever they could gain. He says, but I didn't mean a hired sword. To see them for what they are. He says, the comet lore tells how one may see himself for what he is. Whether it be true or no, I don't know. But all you have to do is gaze in the mirror of Lunette. And Karen's like, the mirror? He had given up all hope of doing that. He said, I'm not going to try. The goal of my quest from the beginning, I had given up searching. Remember what he said to Lasser? I don't know what I'm looking for. Now, do I find it when I seek it least of all? What did he discover in being with Lanio? When he isn't looking for things, he finds them. They just show up. ENGL, your quest? You've not told me anything about this quest. I would have no pride in the telling. Once I would have asked nothing better than to find the mirror. Now, even if it were in my hand, I would dread to look in it. Why?
He doesn't want to know the truth of himself.
Yeah. Knowing the truth can be pretty hard. ENGL, I understand your fears. The mirror may put your heart at ease or trouble you all the more. Such is the risk. Self-knowledge. Okay? This. You know, when I mentioned the other day, the Oracle of Delphi has inscribed outside it, know thyself. That's not easy. Okay? In some branches of the Christian church, there is a practice that everybody has to do. It's called confession. What does that mean? It means you go to a priest and you say what is wrong about yourself. Well, how do you do that? You got to look in the mirror first. In other words, you have to do this. Okay? It's not easy. A novel written in 1977, Sword of Shannara by Carrie Brooks, it's a crappy novel. It's a knockoff. It's a ripoff of Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. Okay? But he does one thing beautifully in there. The sword of the title, the Sword of Shannara, everybody thinks is this wonderful weapon. It will give you power over your enemies. And the thing that he does in there that is such a wonderful twist is you discover that in order to wield the sword, you don't have to be like Aragorn in Lord of the Rings. You don't have to be a long-lost king. No. You have to be able to hold the sword and acknowledge what the sword tells you about yourself. See, the sword gives you self-knowledge.
So basically,
Real
the quest for the sword is a
self-knowledge.
quest for self-knowledge.
Well, kind of. Because nobody knows that that's what the sword does.
Well, that's what the quest alludes to in the
Kind of.
grand scheme of things.
So, when this guy picks up the sword, when he thinks he's going to be able to use it to kill this evil king, he picks it up, and all of a sudden, he sees every bad thing he's done in his life. He's holding it, and it's like flashing through his mind. Every person he's ever slighted, every misspoken thing. And only the person strong enough to accept that self-knowledge, that self-truth, can wield the sword. And he's like holding it and almost dropping it, but he's able to take it. It doesn't mean he somehow rises above and gets massive and goes all Arnold Schwarzenegger. He still stays this scrawny, puny kid. But it means he has greater strength than anybody else because he can take everything the sword shows him and face it. He doesn't shy away. He doesn't turn away from it. He doesn't turn his back on it. And he doesn't drop the sword like it's burning him. He holds onto it until he sees everything, all the rot of his life, and says, yep, that's me. He sees some good too. Okay? Taryn, I would dread to look in it. But know this, wanderer, Anlaw goes on, it is not such a mirror as you think. It lies close by here in the Logadarn Mountains, no more than 2 days' distance, in a cave at the head of the Lake of Lunet. The mirror of Lunet is a pool of water. A pool of water? What enchantment gives it its power? Enchanted it must be. I mean, surely there's a Lady Galadriel. It is to those who deem it so. In other words, it's enchanted if you think it's enchanted. So if you don't think it's enchanted, it's just a pool of water. Taryn, have you looked in it? No. For I well know who I am. Anlaw Clayshaper. That's it. Woo! That's my glory. That's all I am. For better or worse, that knowledge must serve me my lifetime. In other words, he knows he is not what?
A noble person.
A noble person. He's not supposed to be a weaver. He's not supposed to be a smith. He does what he was meant to do. Okay. Taryn, and what knowledge will serve mine? Because Anlaw says, that knowledge must serve me my lifetime. Which is why he also spends every day trying to do what? Improve. If he is the clay shaper, he's going to be what clay shaper?
The best clay shaper.
The very best he can be. Okay? Taryn, and what knowledge will serve me for my lifetime? What must I be? What am I called to be? He says, okay. But I think I've already known shame. Must I know cowardice as well? Taryn, I go to the mirror. So the next morning, Gurgi, go off. He finds the lake. He goes to the head of it. He goes in the cave. Page 212. Within a shallow basin, hollowed in the floor of smooth stones, lay the mirror of Lunet, like a shield of polished silver, gleaming of itself despite the shadows. Taryn kneels at the rim. It's got less than an inch of water in it, fed by a drop coming down from the roof. Yet shallow though it was, the water seemed a depthless crystal whose facets turned one upon the other, each catching brilliant beams of white. Taryn bends closer. The cave was utterly silent. It seemed that even the falling of a wisp of dry moss would shadow the reflection. His hands trembled as he saw his own face, travel-worn, sun-scorched. With all his heart, he longed to turn away, but forced himself to look more deeply. Were his eyes playing tricks on him? Closer he knelt. What he saw made him cry out in disbelief. And then he sees something else. Dorith. And so he and Dorith talk for a little bit. And Taryn says, ill met, Dorith. Will you call your company set upon us? Call them then, all who fled us at Comet Isthoff. Dorith, will you strike before my own blade is out? Draw it then. In other words, Taryn is going to be honorable. he's not going to stab him in the back, even though he has his sword drawn faster. So I shall when my meal is done, Dorth said. He gives a scornful grunt. Your blade is ill-favored, swineherd, uglier than Glof's face. Mine is the fair weapon, yet gained at no cost. My company? They're deaf. Why, half of them, the dirt of their graves stops their ears. So those that got away, some of them died. So he wipes his mouth on the back of his hand. He says, 2 cowards fled, that is 2 of his men. 2 were heavily wounded. Those he killed, speed them on their way. Okay? He says, you'll share your treasure with me. Taran's like, what treasure? Into your line, swineherd. I know you look for treasure up here. Taran, there it is. Is this your trove? And he stomps in the puddle. In the Mirror of Luna, does what with the water? Splashes it all gone. How long did it take for a single drop to fall and make this puddle?
Years and years.
Eons. Okay. So he and Dorth fight. Page 215. The blades met with a grating, ringing clash. Taran's weapon shuddered in his hand. The shock threw him to earth, yet his blade held. The sword of Dorth shattered on it. Now, what is the sword of Dorth?
It was Taran's old sword.
The sword that he stole from Taran, that Taran got from Dalbin. Taran's sword is the one that he made. I almost said was. Okay. Doran flees. Taran sees Gurgi. And he makes his way back to Anlaw's. 2:16. Have you looked into the mirror? Taran says, none shall look in it again. It's destroyed. He tells him what Dorth did. You saw nothing? I learned what I sought to learn. Notice, Anlaw doesn't keep questioning him. What was it Taran sought to learn? Am I nobly born? Who are my parents? Did it have there written in the sand beneath the water, your parents are? I will not question you, wanderer, but if it is in your heart to tell me, I'll listen. I saw myself. In the time I watched, I saw strength and frailty, pride and vanity, courage and fear. Notice the balancing. Of wisdom, a little. Of folly, a lot. Notice, those aren't balanced. Okay? Of intentions, many good ones, but many more left undone. That is, many more good intentions not followed through on. In this, alas, I saw myself a man like any other. In other words, any other man who looked into the mirror would have seen the same. Taran is saying, I'm not so special.
They would have seen Taran's face.
I'm like everybody else. But this too I saw. Alike as men may seem, each is different as flakes of snow, no two the same. You told me you had no need to seek the mirror, knowing you were Anlaw Clayshaper. Now I know who I am. Me. Myself and no other. I am Taran. In other words, Taran now knows he is not what? Or he will not become whom?
King.
King. Prince Gwydion. He is Taran. Anlaw. Huh. If you've learned this, you've learned the deepest secret the mirror could tell you. So, now that he knows who he is, what must happen as a result?
Let's live by it and accept it.
he has to accept it. Okay? There was no enchantment, Taryn says. Just a pool of water. At first I thought Urdu had sent a fool on a fool's errand. She didn't. She meant me to see what the mirror showed me. He says, and you know what? Any stream, any river would have given me the same reflection. But I would not have understood it then as I understand it now. Why? Partially because of what he went through to get to that point. His living with Heaven the Smith, with Dwivek the Weaver, with Enlaw Clay Shaper, with Drudwas and Lasser. As for my parentage, it makes little difference. True kinship has not to do with blood ties, however strong they be. I think we are all kin, brothers and sisters, one to the other, all children of all parents. What's he mean?
Everybody's a person.
Okay, everybody's a person. We are all one part of a family. He says, the birthright I once sought, not anymore. The folk of the free Kamats taught me well that manhood is not given but earned. Even King Smoit in Cantref Catafor told me this, but I did not heed him. Why?
Because he was too worried about being told that he was no birth.
Because he was still seeking honorable birth. Lanio said life was a net for luck. Heaven said life was a forge. Dwivek, it's a loom. They all speak truly. For it is all of these. You showed me something else. You've shown me life is one thing more. It is clay to be shaped, as raw clay on a potter's wheel. Notice that. It is clay to be shaped. In other words, life is what? Kind of tritely said, what you make of it. It's not fated. It's not determined. It's what the individual living it makes of it. Anlaw, and you, wanderer, how will you shape your clay? What are you going to make of yourself, of your life? I can't stay here, he says, much as I love it. Kiradalbin waits for me as it has always waited. In other words, I was meant for there. My life is there, and gladly I return to it. I've been too long away. So Anlaw says, all right, don't forget us. We won't forget you. Taryn, I've got the sword I fashioned. I've got the cloak I wear. And I've got the bowl I shaped. In friendship of those in the fairest land of Predain, which is going to come back and benefit him in the next book. No man can find greater treasure. Okay? And notice, we don't end with Taryn back at Kiradalbin. We pick up in the next book with Taryn riding off to Kiradalbin.
This is only days after the Wanderer.
Pardon?
This is like right after the Wanderer, like picks up exactly where it was, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a few more days because it takes him a while to get from there to this point where he's almost at Kiradalbin. Okay? So you pick up with page 3. It's a gray, chilly day. Taryn's riding on. Okay. He sees Ka. Ka says Ilanwi's name. Taryn's thinking she must be there. Page 5. He gets to Kiradalbin. There's Ilanwi. And she says, I've been waiting to see you for days. After all the time I've been away, learning to be a young lady, as if I weren't one before I left, and when I get home at last, you're not even here. Okay. In another moment, he's at her side. Into that page. She looks at him. They've been hugging. She kind of backs off. She looks at him and says, hold on. That's odd. There's something different about you. Not your hair, Does look as if you'd cropped it yourself with your eyes shut. I mean, unless you told someone, they'd never guess you were an assistant pig keeper. Why?
He's grown.
Himself different now.
He's grown, and as Daniel said, he's carrying himself different. He's no longer walking around, shoulders hunched over, and kind of, standing like this. He stands up straight and tall now. Why? He knows who he is. Okay? So Taryn gives her the bowl he made. And she says, page 6, it's lovely. Yes, I shall treasure it, but that's what I mean too. I'm not saying you aren't a good assistant pig keeper, because I'm sure that you're the best in Prydain, but there's something more. And Call goes, you're right, princess. He left us a pig keeper, comes back looking as if he could do all he set his hand to. Right? Taryn wanted to be a smith. Wasn't his. He wanted to be a weaver. Wasn't his. He wanted to be a potter. Wasn't his. What does Call say?
Well, he can do anything.
Taryn, all you have to do is think it, and you could do that. Okay? Taryn says, no. I learned I was neither swordsmith nor weaver, nor shaper of clay. Gergie and I were already homeward bound when Call found us, and here we stay. In other words, I am content to be Taryn, assistant pig keeper. Alonwe, I'm glad of that. All anyone knew about you was that you were wandering every which way. Dalvin told me you're seeking your parents, and you met someone you thought was your father, but wasn't. Or was it the other way around? I didn't altogether understand it. Taryn, what I sought I found. It's not what I'd hoped. Dalvin, no, it's not. You found more than you sought. You sought parentage. You found more than that. Gained perhaps more than you know. Okay? So they talk about some other things. She mentions Rune. Rune shows up. And Rune says, actually, I'm King Rune now. Father died. You know my mother, she'd never have left off with it, middle of page 7. Even though Dalvin had sent word Ilonwe was to come home. Finally put my foot down, ordered a ship. Amazing what a king can do when he sets his mind to it. A little bit of foreshadowing there. It's amazing what Taryn can do when he puts his mind to it. Okay, what did Call just say? I think you could do anything if you set your hand to it. Okay. There's also glue. So Taryn asks Ilonwe everything she's been doing, and she says learning. What else? She pulls from her cloak something that she made for Taryn. Bottom of page 9. I embroidered it for you. It's not finished yet. I wanted you to have it, though. It's not as handsome as what you made. What is it? It's a piece of fabric. As broad as his outstretched arms, the somewhat straggle-threaded embroidery showed a white, blue-eyed pig against a field of green. So as wide as his outstretched arms. Taryn, this is how big this piece of embroidery is. Why so big? Well, give a little bit away, in case you haven't read this far. This becomes Taryn's battle flag. His battle pennant. She says, I tried to embroider you into it, because you're so fond of hen, but you came out looking like sticks with a bird's nest on top, not yourself at all. So I had to start over with hen alone. He's like, wow, thanks. Doesn't really know what he's going to do with it, hang it up on the wall of his hut. Okay. Page 11. Ilonwe has asked, why do you want to know who your parents are? And Taryn says, you ask why I sought to know my parentage? Because I hoped it would prove noble and give me the right to ask what I dare not ask before. My hope was mistaken. Yet even without it, and they hear a noise. Notice, he doesn't finish his thought. Fluter Flam comes in, blood crusting on his hair. We hear Gwydion is slain. Terrence says, nope, he lives. Bottom 11. Now notice this. Bottom of 11. Fetch medicines. The healing herbs from my saddlebags. And then he stops and says, oh, sorry, Dalbin. Sorry, this is your house. You're the healer here. Dalbin's like, no, go right ahead. It's not for me to command under my master's roof. But the herbs are of great power. Adion, son of Taliesin, gave them to me long ago. They are yours if you wish them. Dalbin, I know their nature. Don't have any that will serve better. Nor should you fear to command under any roof. Why? Since you have learned to command yourself. What does he mean? What has Terran learned during his wanderings?
Be a leader.
To be a leader, how though?
Because he has instincts as a leader. He knows how to take care of people. He knows to follow his gut feeling because his instincts are usually correct. He knows to be selfless.
But what does Dalbin mean when he says, since you have learned to command yourself?
Well, he knows himself, and so he knows what best he can do.
Close. Kind of put your two answers together. What has Terran mastered?
Self-knowledge.
Self-control.
Self-control. Self-control. Okay? I trust your skill as I see you trust it. In other words, you trust in your abilities now. Go ahead. Okay? So, Dalbin says, who did this? Fluter says, the huntsman of Anuvan. And Fluter says that we thought you were out there, Terran. And Terran says, what you saw I cannot judge, middle of 14. We'll talk of these things later, when your memory is clear enough. In other words, he's saying, Fluter, you're mistaken. Something's going on. And Akron shows up. The Harper's memory is clear enough. A black-robed woman moved from the dark corner where she had been silently listening, stepped slowly into the midst of the company. Her long, unbound hair glittered like pale silver. She says, ill fortune mars our meeting, assistant pigkeeper, but welcome nonetheless. What, then do you still fear me? Neither has Ilanwi, daughter of Angerad, forgotten my powers, though it was she who destroyed them at the castle of Lear. Yet since I have dwelt here, have I not served Dalbin as well as any of you? In other words, I'm cool now. So she comes up. Lord Gwydion will live, but he may find a life crueler than fate. She says, your eyes did not play you false, Harper. You saw what was meant for you to see. A pig keeper? Why not? If thus he chose to appear. Only one wields such power. Oran himself. Where? On the borders of Caer Dalbin, Oran has shown up. Okay, before he just sent the Cauldron-born. Terran, what? Akron. Oran dares not pass the borders of Anuvan in his true form. To do so would mean his death, but he commands all shapes, and they are both shield and mask. To the Harper and Lord Gwydion, he showed himself as a pigkeeper. Why? Bait. He could as well have appeared as a fox. Terran, then we are lost. The Lord of Anuvan can move among us as he pleases. We are without defense against him. She says, you have reason to fear, pigkeeper. Now you glimpse one of Iran's subtlest powers. But it is a power used only when none other will serve him. Never will he leave his stronghold, save in the press of mortal danger. Iran has many secrets, but this one is most deeply guarded. Once he assumes a shape, his strength and skill are no greater than that of the guise he wears. That is, when he takes on the form of Terran assistant pigkeeper, that's all the strength and skill he has. Okay? So, Ilanwi says, if only I'd been with you, Fluter, Iran wouldn't have deceived me. Don't tell me I couldn't have told the difference between a real assistant pigkeeper and a false one. What does she mean?
She knows Taryn.
Oh, Taryn, I'd know you anywhere. Okay. Akron, foolish pride, daughter of Angarad, no eyes can see behind the mask of Lord of Iran, Death Lord. No eyes but mine. Why? Because she's the one who taught him how to do that. Long before the sons of Dawn came to dwell in Prydain, long before the lords of the cantrefs swore allegiance to Math, high king, and Gwydion, his war leader, it was I who commanded obedience to my rule. I who wore the iron crown of Anuit. How old is she?
Thousands of years.
Or hundreds, possibly. Okay, but there's been more than one high king. The cantref lords have been there a long time. They pass it down. How old is Dalbin? 369? She's been there longer than Dalbin. She says, Iran was my consort, her lover, who served me, did my bidding. Okay, her slave. He robbed me of my throne, cast me aside, but his powers are not secret. She says, he can never hide his face from me. And I think that's because, she says it's because he was her slave. I think it's because she's saying, I loved him. And I think Alami's going there, yeah, but that's why I could always pick out Taryn, whoever. Okay. So Dalbin says to Taryn, your skill has kept Gwydion from death. Now I must see if mine may help him to life. Okay. Akron says, I shall watch the night over Lord Gwydion. Eilonwy, I will. Fear me not, daughter of Angarad. I bear no ill will against Lord Gwydion. Remember what she wanted Gwydion for earlier, first book?
As her consort.
She wanted him as her consort. There's love there. Weird, twisted kind of way, but the stable is my castle and the scullery my realm. I seek no other. In other words, she's saying, don't worry, princess. I'm not going to hurt him. What did Gwydion say to Akron when he saved her life?
That she needed to find life within herself. 2
words. Close. Seek life. Seek life. She wanted to die. Okay? So, Taryn can't believe, Fluter can't believe what happened. Top of 19. Taryn says, Iran tricked you. Bottom of that page, 19. Rune's just been kind of watching all this. Amazing. I said, I wish I could do that sort of shape changing myself. Unbelievable. I've always thought, how interesting to be a badger or an ant. I should love to know how to build as well as they do. And he talks about wanting to do something in the harbor, how he wants to improve the harbor, okay? But he's not sure how. And then Glue says some stuff, and we're going to leave him aside.
He's back to normal size, though, right?
Yeah, he's back to normal size, which is small still, kind of a midget.
Did they say
Okay.
why they? I couldn't pick up why they decided to bring him.
They do explain why. I don't remember what it is. You'd have to go back to when that's described. Let's pick up. Gwydion has wakened up in pages 22 and 23. Gwydion says, no merry meeting, assistant pig keeper. Says, Dalbin told me how Iran tricked me. What's more important than Gwydion being tricked is, what did Iran do?
He took Dernwyn.
He took Dernwyn. Dernwyn's lineage, middle of 22, is as ancient as Prydain itself, Gwydion says. Much of its history has been forgotten or destroyed. For long, the blade was thought no more than legend and matter for a harper's song. Taliesin, chief bard, is wisest in the lore Prydain, but even he could tell me only that Gavanian the Lame, a master craftsman, forged and tempered Derwin at the behest of King Rideric Heil as a weapon of greatest power and protection for the land. To safeguard it, a spell was cast upon the blade, and a warning graven on the scabbard. Eilonwy, I remember the old writing. Draw, Dernwin, only thou of royal blood. Gwydion, not quite right. Closer to its true meaning is noble worth, says Gwydion. The enchantment forbade the sword to all but those who would use it wisely and well. Flame of Dernwin would destroy any other who sought to draw it. But the writing on the scabbard has been marred. The full message, which might have told more of the sword's purpose, is unknown. He talks about how the king, the old king, had it all his life, and then it was buried with him. That was the body underneath Spiral Castle that Eilonwy took the sword from. Taryn, getting to the point of the matter, page 23. Do you believe Iran can unshield the sword? Is he of noble worth, in other words? Can he turn it against us? Don't know. Gwydion says, I don't know. It may be that he's found means to break the enchantment. Taryn, let me seek Dernwin in your stead. I know the ways of Ockran says, let me seek Dernwin in your stead. I know the ways of Anuvan. No stranger am I to its secret hoards, and where and how they are guarded. If the sword is hidden, I will find it. Okay? Gwydion, vengeance isn't the gift I bestow. In other words, you want vengeance. That's not for me. Why? Vengeance is mine, says the Lord in the Old Testament. She stiffens. She says, you don't trust me? Gwydion, I do not scorn you. When she says, scorn me again to your own loss. I only urge you to accept Dalbin's protection. Stay here in safety. Among all of us, we're going to stop with this, I think. Among all of us, your hope of finding the sword is the least. Iran's hatred of you can be no less than yours of him. He says, no. You try going to his kingdom, and it's going to be like setting off three-alarm fire. No, Ockran, what you offer is not possible. There may be another way to learn how Dernwin shall be found. Okay? Let's stop there, and we'll pick up with page 25 when we come back.
Is quiz going to be over both of these?
No, quiz will be over Terran Wanderer.